To make a long story short, we should be very thankful for our modern translation of the English Bible. There was a tremendous effort put forth by Satan and his angels to destroy and counteract the compilations and translations of these manuscripts into the language of the common people. But God was determined to give his word to his people, and he has prevailed. As Ben noted in a prior video, there are 39 books within the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. The collection of Old Testament Hebrew writings is called the Tanakh, and the Hebrew scribes took great pride in preserving and producing exact replications of the early manuscripts. Jesus even mentioned that not one jot or one tittle, which are the smallest strokes of the Hebrew alphabet, would pass away from the law until all things are fulfilled. This indicates that Jesus recognized the authority and authenticity of the written word of God, which the Jewish nation possessed. This compiled work, called the Tanakh, is estimated to have been completed in approximately 450 BC and has remained unchanged since that time. So regarding the Old Testament, what we have within our Bibles today is a pure and well-preserved volume. Now moving on to the New Testament, things aren't as straightforward with the manuscripts, causing a great deal of controversy among many people. We do not have any complete original works of any book found in the New Testament, but this shouldn't be a shock to us because these documents were well loved and well used, being passed around heavily and circulated among the believers seeking to hear the story of Jesus and the wisdom and counsel of the apostles. What we do have, however, are thousands of copies of these manuscripts in the Greek language, approximately 5,800 actually, and almost twice as many more recorded in Latin. So that is a lot of manuscript evidence, and we can assume that the majority of scribes took great care in replicating each document. They weren't just as insistent as some of the Hebrew scribes in making sure that every jot and tittle was in its place. With that being said, it's understood that 99% of the differences found in comparing the manuscripts were issues with spelling or grammar, and only a very small percentage of the reproductions contained a significant doctrinal contradiction. Basically, even though there were variations, the main story and main points came through very clear and strong in each book. Now, we would be naive to think that there were not spurious and radical authors who attempted to present ideas inconsistent with the genuine material, and certainly there was, but this is where the thousands of legitimate copies helped clear things up. When a scribe would come across a serious inconsistency, it would stick out like a sore thumb. So after the early church agreed upon exactly what manuscripts would be included in the canon, the church in the 2nd century settled with the current 66 books in the Bible. While many are familiar with Jerome's translation into Latin, known as the Vulgate, around year 404 AD, approximately 250 years prior to this in Western Europe, the first translation of the New Testament from the Greek into Latin was done no later than 157 AD by Christians in southern France and northern Italy. This version was called the Italic. The Italic version held its own as long as Latin continued to be the language of the people, but this version eventually fell into oblivion as Latin became a dead language and people were withheld from reading the Bible. A few centuries later, in 1380, God called John Wycliffe to the task of translating the Latin Bible available at the time, which was the Vulgate, into English. However, there was no way to mass circulate this version because the printing press wasn't invented until 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg. A massive leap of progress was gained in 1525 when William Tyndale translated the Greek New Testament directly into English, followed by the Old Testament from the Hebrew. In addition, Tyndale's Bible was the first English biblical translation to be mass-produced with the advent of the printing press, and this Bible was produced into more copies than there had ever been. However, the distribution of his work was forbidden by the powers that be in the Roman Catholic Church, and this eventually led to his capture, strangling, and burning at the stake. His famous last words were, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." Within 1 year of his death, a Bible was placed in every parish throughout the whole of England by order of the king. Less than a century later, King James I ordered 47 scholars to create a new and improved translation of the Bible, again using the Masoretic Hebrew and the Greek Textus Receptus, which was completed in 1611. Several revisions and printing corrections were made in the years to follow, but since that time there have been many modern translations in the English, as well as 735 full Bible translations into other languages. Now, people can hold a variety of opinions on the main methods or accuracy of these Bible translations, but the thought I want to leave with you is this. While yes, the men responsible for the work were not perfect and even had some serious character flaws, and no, the translations we have even today are not infallible, because sometimes the depth of the Hebrew and Greek languages, whose words often have many different meanings, are not always easy to convey into the English language. So there is still value in looking at resources like the Strong's Concordance during our studies to extract a deeper level of meaning. We should remember 1 Corinthians 1:27 and 29. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty, that no flesh should glory in his presence. You see, we are but dust. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." God has the challenge of using imperfect people to convey a perfect message in an imperfect way to other imperfect people. Yet we should be thankful for the written word of God. Many have and will continue to lose their lives for simply having and cherishing this book. There's a good reason that over 5 billion copies have been sold. You can trust this book. There is no other book like it, nor one that can compare to its accuracy relating to the human condition, historical events, and the detailed fulfillment of prophecy, which our next video will discuss further.